Hello, everyone. My name is Lucian. Most of you know me from Twitter as Triangle Investor. In today's edition of CEO and Market Expert interviews, I'm joined by Corey Diaz, Anfield Energy CEO. Corey, welcome to my show, and thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks for having me on.
Thanks. Corey, you recently came back from WNA symposium in London. There was a lot of traders, brokers, fuel buyers, and sellers, CEOs, peers, and other uranium and nuclear energy experts there. How was your experience from that symposium, and did you have any talks with potential customers for your future uranium production, possible offtake agreements from your projects?
I thought the symposium was fantastic. It was just such a positive environment to be in. It kind of underscored, what's happening out in the marketplace. It was clear that, nuclear is not going away. It's expanding. The idea of, parties looking for more nuclear engineers, looking to recruit people, not only people who are within the industry, but also outside the industry to just, service a number of different aspects of the sector itself. So it was very, very positive. All of the CEOs are very bullish. The ones I spoke to and met with, investors are obviously very bullish. The nuclear buyers were probably more subdued than normal, given the trajectory of the uranium price. I think they're probably understanding the supply-demand imbalance and the fact that it's not going to improve anytime soon. But certainly, I think overall it was a great experience and a great symposium.
Excellent. And did you have any possible offtake agreements, deals?
Well, there's conversations. Don't forget that we are, as we're currently constituted, about 1 million pounds per year of production. We can talk about the fact that we're looking at expansion of that production profile, but certainly we wouldn't want to tie up 1 million pounds of production, at today's prices. So, always having conversations, always open to conversations, but not really ready to pull the trigger yet until we, know that the opportunity is the best one in front of us.
Okay, fair enough. I guess there was a lot of hot topics there, like Cameco, new physical funds, like 3 or 4 are coming at the market, new demand supply projections. All these news seems to be ultra bullish for the sector. My question is, how do you see uranium sector, and by sector I mean uranium equities, performing in the upcoming period?
I'm very bullish for the sector. I mean, I've been, CEO here for 10 years, over 10 years now, and I've gone through a lot of the bear market, and I've never seen such a positive environment in my time in the sector. So I think that the way the market's moving, we've seen Cameco cut its production forecasts. Obviously Niger is a big issue. So you can see the supply side has a number of challenges, but yet construction of nuclear reactors continues unabated. So when you've got demand growing significantly and you've got supply being cut, that obviously leads to a position where the uranium price has to go up in order to bring on more pounds or make more pounds available to the market.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, Corey, let's give our audience an update on the company. Let's start with your latest addition in your portfolio, and that is Marquez-Juan Tafoya project, which you acquired from enCore Energy. This deal looks very good for you, I would say. If we look per pound metric of this transaction, acquisition cost is around 60 cents US. That is a very good price for advanced asset. And my question for you is, what are the plans for this project, both short-term and long-term? But let's start with the first steps. What are they?
Well, that asset is one, there aren't that many assets that are as advanced as Marquez-Juan Tafoya in the marketplace that are available for sale. So that's the first thing. We know it's a competitive process. There are other parties who had an interest in that asset, for good reason. But that's and the nature of this market is such that you want to find as many advanced projects as you can, because you want to bypass, the process of having to drill out and define a resource, delineate the resource, that takes time and money. We've always been a group that's pursued assets, primarily ones which have past production,
Yeah.
historic resource, or current resource, in order to bypass this idea of trying to delineate a resource over time. So this fits right into our wheelhouse from that perspective. I think the second thing is it's New Mexico. It's a place we've never been before, and so it gives us a toehold in that market. So there's the potential to potentially expand our footprint within that market. But thirdly, these are pounds that are, under a PEA, historic PEA, which gives us an idea as to the economics tied to the project, which is very important because that's kind of where we are when it comes to the rest of our portfolio. Understand the economics behind the potential production there. We certainly have a lot of pounds in Colorado and Utah already, which would serve as primary source for our hub and spoke strategy, our production strategy. But we could see how this could be complementary to that as we move forward here. We're looking to create kind of a 25 to 50 year, run of production. And that's obviously dependent on the size of our mill, our production profile per year. But certainly we want to get as many pounds available to us to run through the mill, as we look to expand the size of the mill and create a long-term production complex. So, I think that this asset fits very well into that plan.
Can you tell me more about the infrastructure on the property and accessibility of this project?
Sure. It's an asset which has underground workings already. There was a shaft there. It was ready for production a number of years ago. There was a plan to put an actual mill on top of the property. So it's readily accessible. It's not an asset that we'd be pursuing in the immediate term for production. So it gives us a lot of time to determine the best way to pull things out of the ground there. So the plan that was in place was one where a mill would be built at site. Our plan would be to work underground and bring out material to be shipped to the mill. There's some kind of upgrading taking place at site in order to justify the material being shipped to our mill. So it's one where we know that there's a plan. We know that there's accessibility for the resource, but certainly it won't be the first asset that we're going to be pursuing. So we've got some time to determine what the best steps would be to take in order to get the material out of the ground and into our mill.
Okay, but is there a plan maybe to drill test this property? Maybe the enCore missed something. Is there a plan, or you are satisfied with the things how they are now?
Well, look, I think it's an 18 million pound resource. This is the largest uranium resource in our portfolio. So in terms of size, it's a decent size for us. And we bought it based on that being the only resource. That said, as we start moving forward towards production and perhaps pulling pounds out of the ground, then we would look to potentially expand that resource. But certainly starting with 18 million pounds and having a production profile of 1 million pounds a year, hopefully that grows. But certainly at 2 to 3, that's still 6 to 9 years of production available as it stands. But certainly we won't limit ourselves to what's there. We'll certainly keep looking around to see if there are any other pounds that would be complementary to what's there already.
Yeah, good to know. Okay, now after the deal with enCore is closed, can you tell me what percentages do they have in your company, and what percentage your other strategic shareholder UEC has?
Well, post this deal, I'd say enCore would have about just under 20%, about 19.9%, and UEC would be roughly 10% of the holding.
Okay.
Pretty good position for strategic holders, we think.
Okay, let's move to Shootaring Canyon Mill. Can you please give us a fresh update on the mill and some details about the reactivation plan?
Sure. So the mill itself, it's been on care and maintenance for a number of years. We've been working with Precision Systems Engineering, PSE, for a few months to get the reactivation plan in place. That essentially, puts them or commissions PSE to determine what pieces of the mill are still viable, what pieces of the mill need to be replaced, what the cost would be to replace those bits, and how long it would take to secure those pieces. So we've been working with them very closely, trying to determine, what things are actually usable and what things we'll actually have to acquire. So that process, you can understand there's so many moving parts in the mill.
Of course.
They also have to be stress tests. So if we're talking about wiring, we need to make sure that the wiring that's there is actually still usable, right? So it takes a lot of time to go through the mill to see, are all the wires corrupt? Are some corrupt and some still good? So it's a pretty painstaking process in a number of ways, but it's necessary for us to build something that's going to last. So we're going through that process with PSE right now. Ultimately, the plan, as we've kind of moved forward and the plan has evolved, we said, look, we want to see if we can get more pounds of output out of the mill. We think that, we don't want to restrict ourselves given, the dearth of pounds that are going to be on the supply side going forward. So we think that we've been working with PSC to look at the expansion of mill capacity from the current 1 million pounds to somewhere between 2 and 3 million pounds, which we think would service us well given the number of pounds we have within our portfolio. So that's the exciting part for me is, how many pounds can we squeeze out of this mill? If we can get to 2.5 million pounds per year, that's a much different prospect than, 1 million pounds a year. And certainly that's when we start talking about contracting with prospective utilities. Some of those pounds could go into a contract, whereas others would serve as, spot price sales. So it gives us a bit more flexibility. So that's what we're keen on now. And, as part of that process, we've talked about before, we have to work with the state of Utah. So the state of Utah is ultimately the licensor in the state. So our radioactive materials license is, something that's been provided to us by the state of Utah. In order for us to move our license from its current standby status to operational, we have to go through a process where we provide a fair amount of information to the state reviews it, and then says, okay, we're good to move forward to operational. And that's kind of where we are. So PSC is also providing information that will go to the state as part of a larger package that the state will review. And then once it's finished its review, we'll say, okay, we're going to move your license forward. In the interim, that's probably about a 12-month process.
Yeah, that was part of my next question. So that is a 12-month process.
Yeah, it's about 12 months. And so our aim is that within that 12 months, we'll also be able to acquire some of the parts that will be replaced with the blessing of the state that we can store at site. So we can start the process as soon as the license has been amended from its current standby status to operational. We'll be able to start some of the newer construction that's required, for example, the vanadium circuit. So it is a process, and, we need to work with the state in order to do it. And the state will take its time to review, anything related to safety or, health, air quality, those things. That's what they care about. It's not whether or not we can do it or not. It's just, you need to make sure you meet the standards for air quality, environmental measures, everything else. And then our license gets amended. So we know it's a process, 12 months. And then, the extra construction will probably take another 12 months or so, 6 to 12 months. So it's about a 24-month window within which for us to move from where we sit today to where we start producing.
Okay. Corey, do you have a plan maybe to process ore from other companies at your facility?
We do, based on an expanded production profile. At 1 million pounds a year, it'd be very difficult to do because we've got so many pounds of our own to go through the process. If you look at our PEA, our peak year is actually about 1.8 million pounds of production per year. So we certainly need the expanded capacity for our own mines, but going forward, if we have 2.5 million pounds of capacity per year, we could certainly entertain processing through a toll milling agreement.
I had a lot of my followers asking me about the value of the mill, which we discussed in our prior interview when you explained how much money would be needed today to build that kind of facility. Do you know, is there a plan? Is there any word on the street that someone is planning to build a new processing facility in uranium production-friendly states in the United States?
Well, I'm sure there are lots of parties who would be interested in doing so. The difficulty in a lot of ways is, the radioactive materials license is the thing that you need to secure. There are only 4 in the United States. And, it takes a lot of time and effort to go to the state in order to qualify, in order to gain one of those licenses. So that's the first step. You can't just build a facility, get a piece of land and build it. You need to have the cooperation of the government, the regulators, in order to be able to put something somewhere.
Exactly.
There's a lot of NIMBYism too. It's not in my backyard, and so you have to find a place that is conducive to having this type of facility in the vicinity. So that's the other challenge. You've got government challenges. You've got population challenges. So you need to find a place, where both can meet and be fine. So I think, notwithstanding those issues, the time to construct, and from conception to, final construction and production is probably a good, 7, 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's a challenge if you're a publicly traded company to, keep investors engaged for that long. Notwithstanding the cost of building a new mill. I think we talked about the cost to build a new mill. Something like ours, there was somebody who looked to build a new mill probably about 10 years ago, smaller than ours, but 500 tons per day. Ours is 750 tons per day. And the cost was roughly, in US dollars, about 150 to $160 million. So, that would imply our price is clearly north of $200 million to build a new mill. Our refurbishment costs are well south of that. So, given the cost, given the idea that you have to find a place that no one objects to, and the process with the regulators to secure a license, there are a lot of moving parts, and it's very difficult, I think, to get there. I'm not saying that it's impossible, but certainly, other parties looking to start from scratch will have, much more challenges or many more challenges than we do, given where we are today.
Yeah. You mentioned time frame, 2-year time frame, but let's assume spot price is at the moment is nearing $70, which is much closer to the price you have calculated for your projects. What if we see a scenario with a sharp rise in uranium price? Is there a flexibility to maybe speed up the timing of production?
Well, we have to work with the state, and it all comes down to how quickly the state is willing to move forward on the work that it does. So that's where, that's kind of the bottleneck in our production scenario. So I don't know if it moves any more quickly. I think that what that would do is probably provide more monies, or more monies will be available to us, hopefully at better rates when it comes to production, and for the project financing. So that's probably the one thing. There'll probably be more parties to entertain from that perspective, I think, with a higher uranium price. But I don't think, we'll be able to move any more quickly, given that we do have to deal with the regulators.
Okay, fair enough. Corey, can you give me an update on your other properties, Wellwood Woods deposit, Frank Camp deposit, West Slope project, and your Arizona projects? Is there something that is new that is going on at the moment? What are the plans? Give us an update, please.
Sure. I think when we're going through the process of getting the mines ready for production, there's a lot of engineering that takes place. Plans of operations are being put in place for Velvet Wood, and also for Slick Rock. West Slope has, it has a plan of operations in place already. Those mines are actually probably the closest ones to being in production, and low cost because there's equipment there already. The adits are open. You could see some of the ore sitting within the chutes. So it's not a very sexy part of moving forward when it comes to production, but this is a very necessary part. So we've got lots of engineers on the ground doing the work to get these assets ready for production. As I said, the bottleneck will be the mill, but we'll have the mines up and running and ready to start delivering ore to the mill when the mill is up and running. So everything's kind of advancing as it should. Like I said, it's a lot of engineering work, not the most sexy work to be done, but it's necessary for us to prepare them for production.
Besides uranium, your future income will come also from vanadium. At what percentage, at what ratio will it be, approximately, if you can say? What percentage of future revenues will come from vanadium for your company?
Well, I mean, it'll all depend on the price of vanadium. I think, the ratio for the mines in Colorado are essentially vanadium mines. There's some uranium in them. So the ratio can run anywhere between 5 parts vanadium to 1 part uranium to 6 parts vanadium to 1 part vanadium. So depending on how high and how close those prices are, uranium to vanadium, given the way that uranium's taking off, we'd say the greater percentage of our revenue will come from uranium. Certainly, you can't discount the vanadium given the volume of vanadium that's in those mines. So it's a nice complementary material which will have that much value to the ore that comes into a mill and ultimately into the till. So I think vanadium is something we don't discount, and we pay attention to the market. The market has softened a little bit, but we still are bullish on the sector. We're big believers in vanadium flow batteries. We think a business there, a real business opportunity, which is something that we'll also consider. Does it make sense for us to create a value-added business on that side of the ledger? So we certainly like the idea of having that flexibility to produce both materials because there's a market for both.
Yeah. One question regarding your cash position after you close the deal with enCore. What is the current status of your cash position, and do you expect to raise money at any time soon?
Yeah. So after the transaction, we raised $4.5 million. We're sitting. We've got a little over $1 million in the bank. We've been working with various parties, during the whole transaction with enCore, because of the way the market was moving. The market was quite soft, and so we've got contingencies in place for funding that we're still continuing today. I think for us, we're looking at the way that the market's moving. Certainly, sentiment is bullish. So at some point in the future, I'm sure we'll be back in the marketplace. Don't forget, we're a pre-revenue company, so we need to go to the market to raise money. But certainly, we're not in a rush to do it when it comes to equity, because we think the equities are going to continue to move up from here. As I said, as the market cap grows, it certainly gives us opportunity to raise larger sums of money, and some of those monies will be directed towards refurbishment of the mill, getting new equipment for the mill, and advancing the mines that we have, including Juan Tafoya. So, there will be a justification for us to go back to the market, certainly, and I think, in large volumes, if that's what we choose to do, because we do have things that we can spend money on in order to advance ourselves closer to production status.
Okay, that was Corey Diaz, Anfield Energy CEO. Corey, thank you very much for coming to my show. I wish you luck with your projects and going forward with them.
Thank you very much, and thanks again for having me.